Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Karina, Belin.
Thank you. Absolutely, yes, because we have to do now what we love to do and what we do best, which is showcasing startups and showcasing the teams behind the startups. So, without further ado, can I please have here on stage my fantastic panel. I have Jamie Salter, lead engineer at Carv. I also have Lamont, Tang, who is CEO of Oyalabs, and I saw Florian sitting over there. We have one here for you. Florian Simmendinger is CEO and founder of Soundbrenner. So, just to build on, the panel from before, we're gonna obviously showcase you guys. That's the main objective. But the second objective is just to look a little bit. Is that Greater Bay Area initiative just a hot topic? It's just a sexy concept, or there's some real concrete opportunities that you guys are seizing day in, day out? And we'll get started with Lamont. If you could please introduce what Oyalabs is doing. We had a quick, short description from Duncan about Oyalabs. Please go ahead in your own words.
Hi, my name is Lamont. So we're building the first hardware platform to monitor your child's language and cognitive development. So we're making parenting easier to raise healthy, smart, and happy children. We're clinically validated. We're backed by Johnson & Johnson as well as HAX.
Great, wonderful. Yes, Jamie, tell us a little bit more. I heard that if you guys love skiing, this is the device that you really need to own because it's basically a coach that does not only connect to your legs, but is sitting in your ear and helping you understand what to do.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Jamie. I'm the lead engineer. I lead the hardware development at Carv. So, this is a little bit of an old video. This is our product, which is 48 pressure sensors and motion sensors that you put into your ski boot, and we're a digital ski coach. So we can see exactly what your foot's doing with our pressure sensors and motion sensors, and then Bluetooth to an app on your phone, and you get real-time coaching through headphones or detailed analysis on the screen as you ski. And actually, it's interesting what Duncan was saying earlier. You see a lot of people in this wearable space have died. There's a lot of confidence floating around. And I think the interesting thing that we're trying to focus on is really providing value to the customer. So we're not just a tracking device, we're trying to teach you how to do something better. And we're starting in skiing, but fundamentally we're trying to learn how to teach you to do something counterintuitively with feedback from sensors and then move that into other sports.
Yes, and Florian, so it's the first wearable device for musicians. What's the Soundbrenner do?
Yeah, that's right. So we're Soundbrenner. Our story is in 2014, my co-founder Julian and me, we just graduated from university. We met in Berlin. We were both musicians. We were super frustrated with how in the music making space, there's been almost no innovation in design or technology. So the area where we saw a huge opportunity was rhythm, because rhythm is something that not only a few musicians care about, but something that every single musician in the world has to care about every time they play music. And so our idea was today the main tool to master rhythm is a metronome, which makes a click sound, which is incredibly annoying. All musicians say that's an instrument of torture. And we said, what if you could, instead of listening to the rhythm, literally feel the rhythm with a wearable device? Very early on, we met Brink, who was earlier here on the panel. They invited us to come here to Hong Kong. We're now here for 3 years. We've now manufactured over 60,000 devices. We're in over 40 countries. We have the #1 metronome app in the world with 250,000 monthly active users and a couple of million downloads. So really exciting progress in the last couple of years and months. But now, of course, the question is, once you taste the blood as an entrepreneur, you don't want to stop there. We don't want to be the best metronome company in the world. Really, we want to be the best music technology company in the world. We want to grow 100 times bigger, and so that's what we're focused on today.
Great, thank you very much. So you're all operating in this Greater Bay Area, and by now we all understood that you're backed by HAX and by Brain. But let's forget about the guys here. Let's have an intimate conversation. You can agree to disagree what the guys said at the panel before. Tell us a little bit, at what stage did you decide to set up shop here in Hong Kong/Shenzhen, and what were the first learnings out of that?
I actually started out here in Hong Kong, so we did our initial clinical studies here at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and then from that, that's how we started the hardware company, and then through HAX, and also the help of Cyberports here. So that's how we started.
Because originally you're based out of San Francisco, right? So why did you decide to bring the research here to Hong Kong? Because arguably people would think you're based in San Francisco, you should have everything you need over there. Why Hong Kong?
I think you have the stereotypes of where you have efficient cost operating structures here. Engineers are a little bit cheaper than Silicon Valley. We've got the Shenzhen manufacturing scene here, where it's much easier to do rapid prototyping and almost 5 to 10 times faster just being physically here.
Okay, yeah, got it. And you said you actually came at the idea stage in the Shenzhen.
So we came to Shenzhen sort of 3 years ago, I've been living in Shenzhen for the last 2 years, and I don't think there's a better place to be for developing hardware. I have looked into moving to Hong Kong, but that's purely because living in Shenzhen for 2 years as a foreigner is quite a tough pill to swallow. Socially, I would say. So, for me, the Greater Bay Area is a fantastic initiative as a way of persuading. So I should explain that the structure of our team: hardware is in Shenzhen, and then software, commercial, everything else is in Europe. And persuading more team members to come over to Shenzhen is difficult for extended periods of time because it's a difficult place to live. It doesn't have the infrastructure of sort of joining sports teams, all this kind of stuff. Like I commuted every weekend to play hockey in Hong Kong because there aren't hockey teams in Shenzhen, obviously. And so the Greater Bay Area gives us, if it works, and it's a lot easier to cross the border between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, I would love to live in Hong Kong. But right now, living in Shenzhen is very fast. For example, we were designing our version 2 a week ago. We got a guy, we needed new components, and I messaged my supplier on WeChat and say, hey, Bill, I need this new component. And he goes, okay. And then I messaged him in the morning. About 3 hours later, he said, check with reception. There it was. I go and try it, and we ordered the wrong component. I made a mistake. The thing didn't work. So I messaged Bill again at about 2 p.m. I said, Bill, I screwed up. I need a different one. And about an hour later, he was like, another one's at reception. And these are like sourcing components. You're in the ecosystem. You're in the Chinese capital and the world capital of electronics manufacture. So there's really no replacement for me in terms of developing hardware to Shenzhen.
Okay, so it was really the value proposition of HAX that lured you into Shenzhen and you stick through. You said something interesting. You said the research is still in the UK. Why is that?
The software is certainly still in the UK, but it's in the UK and Europe. I mean, it's mostly because you can't ski in Shenzhen. So,
fair point.
And we have tried, and the world's indoor ski centre is terrible. I don't recommend anyone try it. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So we do.
Would you say that in terms of research, for example, that's another stereotype, right? That actually there's better stuff happening in China now already.
Oh, 100%. I mean, yeah, like all the hardware. So this is our own custom pressure sensor, is designed by us in Shenzhen. It's very inefficient for us to do that outside of Shenzhen because of speed, because of cost, because actually maybe you pick components or you design your system in a way in Europe that you bring it to China and you can't find suppliers, or it's kind of self-validating. If you develop it in Shenzhen, you can scale it and build it in Shenzhen.
Yeah. Florian, I see you nodding, yes. It's a very similar experience for you?
Yeah, exactly. So I have this kind of funny story to share where when we started out, obviously the core to our first product is the vibration motor. And we had back then in Berlin, old Nokia phone. We opened that, we took the vibration motor, we could build the first prototype. But then you want to know, okay, what's the best motor? So we went to all the electronics shops in Berlin, of which there were 2, and we found one motor. So that's the motor we had for months to prototype. We ordered one from eBay, we had 2. So then we came out to Shenzhen, went to Huaqiangbei, and there's this old lady with a cart with wheels, and she had like 100 motors, like literally every motor ever built into a consumer electronics device. And my co-founder and me were looking at each other like, holy shit, this is amazing. This is exactly where we need to be, right? And so that's why we decided to stay in Hong Kong. And I mean, there's also an interesting question between do you go to Shenzhen or do you go to Hong Kong? For us, we thought, Hong Kong not only made sense for hardware, but also moving forward for the business development side, because our 2 most important markets in the world are the US and China. And we feel like from Hong Kong, you can actually hire. So our entire marketing team is in our office here because you can find people who can speak to the US consumer. Like our marketing team, they just fly to Los Angeles and they talk to famous artists, produce videos with them. You would have a lot harder time to find something like that in Shenzhen. But then on the other hand, we can also find people who can speak to the Chinese consumer. So we feel like literally Hong Kong is the best place in the world to build this company. So we're really excited to be here.
It's interesting because you talked about the US, and if I remember correctly, also at the very early stage, you looked at the US in terms of production. And if I remember correctly, you said it's just also the speed in which things happen. Compare Silicon Valley to Shenzhen. Shenzhen already, when you started out shop here, was way ahead. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, obviously speed is huge. Like you can literally go to any crowdfunding site and you see exactly who's not in China and who's in China by checking who is delayed and who isn't. So that's kind of how it goes. So yeah, speed is huge.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I was going to jump in with the hiring thing.
You disagree, by the way.
I'm agreeing in terms of, we just hired a production manager and we needed a person, a guy or a girl who could speak either and Chinese, Mandarin, and English. And we looked around in China. We didn't have enough cash to use Michael Page or a recruitment agency. So we went online, looked around on a lot of the online job finding websites in China and in LinkedIn. We got 100 applicants, sifted through them, phone interviewed about 30, face interviewed about 10, and long and short of it, 9 out of the 10 people that I had a face-to-face interview were from Hong Kong. Like the best candidates for this role were from Hong Kong. And that's not to say they necessarily grew up in Hong Kong. Some of them were mainland Chinese who then were over here already. But certainly from a recruiting perspective, Hong Kong seems to, just from our small foray into that area, seems to have talent.
But then actually, do you have these Hong Kong talent ready to work out of Shenzhen? Because I think we talked that a little bit at the other panel as well, about these stereotypes that Hong Kong people don't want to go to Shenzhen.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess actually I should say two things. The first one is actually there's a number of Chinese teams that now Duncan was speaking about in the HAX office who are mainland Chinese, and they have a full Chinese team, and it's very easy for them to hire, and they can hire excellent candidates. The difficulty is finding someone who's very good at English and very good at Mandarin, who is also an engineer. Those guys you find in Hong Kong. But yeah, so we now have somebody who is over here because he has children, he educates his kids in Hong Kong, and he's tied to Hong Kong, but he commutes to the HAX office where we work out of a few times a week.
Very interesting. And Lamont, we were talking previously, right? For the recruiting, there's also an aspect of cost, right? And you talked about the Bay Area on the other side versus here. Just tell us a little bit. You gave me some benchmarks, right?
Sure. So I think for one Silicon Valley engineer, it's at least $150,000 for that amount. You can get maybe about 2 to 3 engineers here in Hong Kong or in Shenzhen. There is just kind of the gaming side. We've had a range of different types of talents come in, and I think just one anecdotal story is we did have one Hong Kong engineer. It's not typical. They said, oh, so do I have to travel to Shenzhen? I said, well, yes, if you're doing hardware, you have to travel there. He said, okay, then this is not the job for me. So that's just sort of to let you know that there's still some mentality here in Hong Kong, just for some people that they don't want to go to Shenzhen. But I think for the most part, you see sort of this, there's a good mix of talent here that's willing to go from Hong Kong to Shenzhen. And I think compared to Silicon Valley, I think it's just much easier, especially for hardware. So most of our hardware teams here, our business development will be in the US as well as some of our natural language processing.
And you were saying for one talent in the US, you can get how many talent here for the same salary?
It's like two to four, depending on the type of talent that we're looking for.
That's quite steep, yes. Okay, so we talked about all the advantages and why you guys are so happy about the choice that you made. Now, what are some of the expectations that you came with and you were kind of like really disappointed? I don't know who wants to get started. Is it in the area of funding where you're looking for investors, maybe Chinese investors, Hong Kongese investors? What are some of the...
Sure. So I'll start. So I can tell you that we've encountered some problems. So we are a US-based company with a Hong Kong subsidiary. Having that association can be sometimes a turnoff for some US investors in Silicon Valley. And then in Hong Kong, you encounter I think it was mentioned before, the investors here tend to be more late-stage investors, more like on the mature PE side. They're less willing to take risks for early-stage startups like ourselves. And then to get investment in mainland China, that's something that actually we found that is something quite interesting. We've got quite a few suitors in mainland China. So I think for us, Hong Kong is sort of an interesting place. We're still trying to figure out exactly how to work that ecosystem. But that's sort of my initial impression.
I'm an engineer, so I will talk about factories. I guess what I was really hoping in Shenzhen is that we could go to a factory and we could bring them a prototype that works, and they could kind of walk us through the whole process and everything would be done. And that wasn't really the case. And I think it's partly because if you go to these tier 1 suppliers and these contract manufacturers, you pay through the nose, but you get some quality engineers and they're really taking the products and they can do a fantastic job. If, as was a little bit discussed earlier, you're developing hardware on a budget, you can't go to these contract manufacturers because you just can't, it's not viable to generate from your prototype to something that's mass production ready with a small budget. And sure, actually, if you're in Silicon Valley and you've raised a huge amount of capital, then you can hire your Silicon Valley engineers and then you can pay your contract manufacturers in China, and the kind of business model works. But it doesn't work if you're on a budget. So you end up going to these like tier 3, 4, 5, 6, however far down the manufacturing chain you go, and you get factories who are willing to work with you on a low volume, and they're willing to do that because they're not very good. And so something that, I don't know, it's a little bit painful. And the reason I think I guess we would agree, the benefit of being in this area and in Shenzhen is you can really like hold their hand through the manufacturing process, and you have to put a lot of work in to make sure that the product comes out with quality, because otherwise you get a complete shitstorm.
Right, but then again, it's good just to be, sitting next to the guys, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're there, and the people who if you go too far down the ladder, then it gets very difficult. You have to like spend enough money. But the people who try to leave China, it seems to me, and don't have a big enough budget to go to these top-end manufacturers, end up having communication problems. They'll see prototypes come back once a week, once a month. They're not in the factory all the time, reviewing what's going on, really making like driving the changes. And so basically something that I learned is that it's on a budget. So we shipped 2,500 of these last season. We're doing 5,000 next season, and we had 600K total investment to go from design to mass production and shipping, which isn't that much. It's basically nothing. And so we're on a massive budget, and so the only way that we can do that is to be there in the factory.
Right. Florian, what was your biggest disappointment actually from?
Yeah, I guess I would have to say there has like sort of the expectations that have been set to us by our accelerator when we came here to Hong Kong have been in such a way have been in such a way that we kind of knew the pitfalls, what to expect, what to do, what not to do. I guess I would have to say, like, if I would have to complain about something being in this area, being in Hong Kong, it would probably be the lack of talent in the mobile app engineering space, which is such an important component of any IoT company that's really ambitious, right? So in our case, for example, we do all the hardware engineering here and everything else too, but the mobile app engineering, we actually have a team in Berlin still, where we basically build the app we have today. So maybe that's sort of something to think about, and ideally, obviously, you would want to have that in the same place.
Okay. Now, one of the other potential downsides that is always discussed about manufacturing in China, just a very quick round here, is about making sure that nobody copies your product, takes away the IP and runs with it. Is that something that keeps you awake at night, or?
No, we actually encourage it because we're actually seriously, because we're actually a software and AI company. So all our intellectual property is on the software side, on the technical validation side, and so the hardware for us is super cheap. And so if they can make it even cheaper for us, that's great for us. So that's the way we've designed our entire business model.
Yeah, I mean, exactly the same. Like all our USP or everything we need to protect is in the software. So we don't mind so much if someone copies because the software is really the core component.
Yeah, I think as a hardware entrepreneur, if you are spending a lot of energy in preventing people to copy your hardware, you in a way already lost the game. Like the way you need to focus, the thing you need to focus on is software. That's just what, if you study the successes and the failures in the hardware space in the last 5 years, I think very much the hardware entrepreneur community is still trying to figure out, how do you build a successful consumer hardware company? There was also a topic in a panel earlier, right, where you could really see certain things, especially like hardware-only companies, think GoPro, for example. Nobody would build a similar company today anymore. I think it's clear that software is the way to go. So, yeah, for us, the same. That's how we protect ourselves.
And I would reiterate what Florian said about finding data scientists and software engineers in China and Hong Kong or Shenzhen is tricky. So all our data scientists are in London, where there's a good data science hub.
Okay, got it. Before I open it up to the floor, one more question, because if I understand correctly, your consumers and your markets are in the West, right? So is there a further opportunity for the Greater Bay Area, specifically Shenzhen, right, to help you really unlock the Chinese market, the Chinese consumers? Or is that something that you think you're just going to do naturally once you've exhausted the Western market?
I guess what I would say is that we actually will do market entry first in the US, build the brand there, and then later come to the APAC region or China region. So we do actually have the connections there, but I think for the first part, we're mainly focused on building the brand, particularly in North America.
I mean, Jamie, you said you cannot ski in Shenzhen, but there are other places in China where you have snow.
Xi Jinping has said that he wants to have 300 million new Chinese skiers skiing in the next by 2030, which adds it's more than doubling the ski market. So all the big ski companies, sports companies, winter sports companies are very focused on China right now. Particularly the Beijing Olympics, Winter Olympics is coming in a few years, and so there's a huge amount of growth in the winter sports industry up north in China. So it will be useful to have a base here for that. Is it essential for us? I don't necessarily think so. I mean, if we produced, for example, in the US, we would just be exporting into China for that market. I'm not sure that it's really a reason that we're in China.
Yeah, but what would we need, like in terms of talent, for example, right? I mean, do you think
sure. Yeah,
comfortable
the model is very different.
Go to market,
with the Chinese consumer, you need to have, like, speaking to some of the Chinese distributors doing early talks, I mean, it seems you need to have a huge amount more of customer support. It seems like the typical Chinese consumer doesn't read the instruction manual, and they want 24-hour WeChat access, or to, like, I mean, if you use Taobao, if you guys familiar with Taobao in Hong Kong, then you message a supplier at midnight, and you get a reply about 10 minutes later about where your package is or what it does or something. And that's what's expected, which means we'd have to do a lot of investment into the customer service that we wouldn't need for Western consumers.
Yeah, how big is the position market in China? Are you tapping into it soon?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who knows anything about China knows that there are a lot of tiger moms trying to get their kids to learn piano, and that stereotype is actually true. So looking at the Chinese market, it's an incredible opportunity. There's, I think, roughly 100 million kids in China who learn a musical instrument. The mentality is perfect. People love to invest in education. On the one hand, on the other hand, you have people who are really interested in adopting new technologies early. So we think China will either be our number 1 market or our number 2 market moving forward. So actually one of our biggest priorities right now is to figure a way out to really, enter the market in a way that we can win in a big way.
Thank you. Anson, before you ask your buzzword question, can we take 1 or 2 questions?
We are. In fact, I was just coming over to say, does anyone have any comments or views? I imagine, Benjamin Joff, you have a view and opinion, as always.
I just realized that I called the previous panel the Insiders panel, but I think this is the Cool Insiders panel, because those guys are on the ground and they're building products. But one thing I wanted to highlight, it's kind of coincidence, we have those 3 startups that actually have a common thread. So the common thread is that we hear lots of concerns around AI, taking over the world, robots killing us. But here you have 3 companies that actually are using AI, machine learning, sensors on ways to close the loop to help teach humans.
One is about teaching language, another teaching skiing, and another teaching music on rhythm. So those are companies building technology that help us improve ourselves. And I think that's kind of uncommon to have that. And I think this is one of the interesting trends actually going on with technology. So just want to...
No, that's a very good point. So we're not going to be replaced by robots, right?
They're going to make us better.
So robots going to make us better humans.
Does anyone have any last final comments or thoughts?
Think about
No?
work, guys.
There's one, okay. Benjamin's coming over, hold on.
Yeah.
He runs faster than I do.
Probably the big question is, would you do it any other way if you were to start again?
Good point. Would you do things differently if you had to start all over again, Lamont?
I think we're a little too early stage to say that we've made that many mistakes.
And the good news is you can pivot.
Yeah, we can pivot, so maybe ask me about it here too.
We're going to ask you next year. Jamie?
I mean, we've made loads of mistakes, but
Right.
none of them are major. I mean, there were some. Yeah, I mean, there's small mistakes that are pretty boring. Would we do anything major differently? Probably not. I mean, we had to be in Shenzhen. It was the only real route to getting the product out. We probably would have told our Kickstarter backers a more realistic release date.
That's always a good point, isn't it, about those Kickstarter campaigns. Florian, would you do things differently in Soundbrenner?
Well, I guess I would say, obviously you make mistakes, but I would have to, realistically assuming, I'm in the same position as back then with the knowledge I had, I would say, we did a pretty good job navigating. In a way, building a company is sort of like a toddler learning to walk. You get up, you walk a bit, you walk into the door, you fall down, you get up again, and you figure things out along the way. So I think, it's been an amazing journey. So I don't want to complain.
Now, Florian, just before you go, one final point of view. What's it like working with Belin?
Obviously,
You tell us. Just be honest.
Let's be on the record here. Obviously, it's been an incredible pleasure to have him as a mentor. So,
Florian, I sense from your voice that you're lying. Anyway, just before we go, we are at the end of our session. Buzzword bingo. I'm always interested about buzzword bingo. So give me your buzzword. What should we do differently when we leave here? Or what should we do differently when we go back to the office tomorrow morning?
Think about human capital.
Okay, good one. Think about human capital.
Both for the Greater Bay Area here, and also for what we're doing, which is our first product.
And are you confident about this Greater Bay Area? Or are you kind of psyched about?
I am. I think that the promise is more there than what I see currently. Yeah, it's definitely growing. I've seen it grow significantly. So I think there's a lot of promise.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Jamie, give me some profound...
Ben actually took the words out of my mouth. My buzzword was closing the loop, which is something that we're trying to do, using sensors to give feedback.
Good point. And are you confident about GBA, or
to be honest,
are you going to stay here, or are you going to go back to England?
I will be moving. I'll be doing 50-50 probably. In terms of GBA, we're very happy in Shenzhen. Hong Kong is great for a social life. Am I that concerned about GBA? Not really. I don't mind too much. We have everything we need in Shenzhen apart from the lifestyle.
Okay. So it's all about the lifestyle. Exactly. Stay here. Florian, your buzzword.
Well, yeah, obviously it has to be music. Like
that's a cop out. You can't keep it just music.
Say
something profound.
The mission of our company is to bring music to more people. So obviously that's what we have to represent. But okay, I give you something else then.
Please
let me give you my second option. So since we're talking about hardware startups, I think the key here for in the future moving forward, especially in consumer hardware, is vertical integration. So that's my buzzword. So basically, in order to build a great consumer company moving forward, you gotta vertically integrate things like hardware, software, content, for example, and then at the end you get a business like Peloton. So there you go.
And are you confident then about GBA? Are you heading back to Berlin anytime soon?
No, I mean, we're excited about this because, you know, as I said, anything that can make the Chinese consumer more accessible to us is amazing.
Good. And you wouldn't really want to move back to Germany, would you? Because you've got quite a, you know, your football team's pretty rubbish.
I was going to say there's very little reason to go back to the UK or to Germany.
I can tell you, so Germany won the World Cup in 2014. That's the year when I left, so it's clear the mojo's been missing.
Okay, the mojo has gone from German
Actually,
football.
do you know that the team who went the most of the times into the finals are the Germans, 8 times?
Really?
Yes. Even more than the Brazilians.
More than the Brazilians, okay? More than the English? Okay, you don't need to answer that. Now, Karina, you are going to have the last word. Well, maybe I'm going to have the last word, but I'm going to give you the last buzzword.
What else would you get out of me than the word passion?
Passion. Gotta have passion.
Yeah, and I really believe, you know, you cannot really understand the potential of Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area if you look past. It's all in the future to come, and I really trust, you know, the Hong Kongese and the Greater Bay Area people to keep that passion and to keep that pragmatism and hardworking spirit. It's going to make a difference, for sure.
Pragmatism, passion, 100 million musicians, 300